Hey traders, TG Watkins here. Welcome to the weekly report brought to you from Austin, Texas. I actually just flew in to closely surprise my friend that lives here. We actually know from each other from Arizona, but his birthday is this weekend. So I flew in, and you guys can see here, I don't know if I can zoom in, but there's actually a swan on that lake, an inflatable. So we're going to be getting on one of those party barges this weekend. So it's going to be a good time. Anyway, we're going to get into the video. The market went down 2% today, which is absolutely ginormous. If you guys were surprised, there were a lot of signals that were telling us that this was going to be coming, so I'm going to go through that in this video to show you what were the clues, what we saw, how we actually are capitalizing on that. We did take some big trades on this. We've succeeded, and I'm going to go through that in this video, so stay tuned, and going to be fun in Austin. All right, guys. Catch you soon. All right, hey traders, TG Watkins here. It is August 1st. Welcome to the new month. So, and what a day for it. The market, as we all know, went basically straight down 2%. Big move to the downside. We were very well prepared for it, as I said in the intro. And so today was a good day. I'm going to show you guys some account gains and some account values. So that should be fun if you guys want to check it out. And then also, I'm traveling, so I was going back looking around at the trading room. So these are excerpts from people in the trading room and what they're talking about. And it's just kind of fun to see what everybody's talking about. I wasn't around today, but everyone's pretty much happy about this. You know, we've been taking a lot of profits on our longs. We've been really lightening up on the long side. We put on some shorts, and we were definitely hedging through all of this. And so the subscribers and traders in the room were having a pretty good time. So, you know, Emil out here saying, you know, good job that I was trying to keep everybody away from the danger zone. Definitely true. Other people were taking my lead of what I was trying to say and that they were doing other things about this. So, you know, that was cool. I always love seeing that people actually, you know, they're hearing what I'm saying about this market to be cautious, all this kind of stuff, and then they take their own action based on the skills and knowledge that they have and what's good for their account. We were very patient because, you know, tops take time to form, and this one definitely took, God, I feel like it took 3 weeks, because how many of my recent videos have I been putting out, be like, careful, caution, 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 and then, you know, finally it's here. So yeah, that worked out well for us. Of course, there will be a bounce at some point. You know, this is when we start really getting into the day trading type situation. Of course, I have some swing trades. They're mostly short right now. And yeah, at some point, this will end up being a great buying opportunity, but we might need to wait a while. So don't be in too much of a rush to go buy anything on the long side. I think we've got some time to let the market come down and cool off for a while. And then Eric, always appreciate seeing something like this. You were saying agreed about keeping you away from the danger zone, and this kept you from making a bad decision or two. So again, always love seeing this. You know, even if you guys aren't doing anything, if you're just in cash, the fact that I'm helping to guide you in this market keeps you from making a bad decision or something like that. Hey, that's worth it. Totally worth it. And Enrico, yeah, finally getting that flush that we have been waiting for this morning. I guess also part of it is tariff panic. There might be some of that, and now our our call credit spreads are working very well. There you go, and you're welcome for the guidance and patience on this trade. Okay, so let's then. This is going to be the list of everything I go through. Remember, guys, that this is for educational purposes only. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube so you can keep getting these videos. And then here I'll show you what some of the accounts have looked like. So this one is mostly my stock trading account. This is kind of my longer term, slower account, and this one was one that I really just wanted to hedge against. And so what you can see is I started putting in SPXS and SOXS. These are leveraged inverse ETFs. You know, they're basically stock. You can trade options on them, but I was just doing stock. You can see I've had a pretty healthy amount in each of those just to kind of hedge it off, and you can see, you know, up a pretty good percent based on what the market's been doing. So decent hedge. And then you can see I put on some SARC, which is not leveraged, but it is an inverse ETF. So, you know, up a few percent on that one, nothing super crazy. And then I did decide, I don't do this very often, but this one I saw pretty clearly. I'll show you guys in the video how I saw this and what was going on. I wanted to take my a little swing at this and see what happens. I did buy some UVIX calls, and you can see that went up 170%. I cashed in most of this stuff today. I did have a little bit of time at the airport this morning, and you know, when you get a big drop like this, sure, it could keep going, but we have the weekend, it could bounce, and these were shorter term options. I just wanted to cash it in. So mostly cashed in something like that, and then we had ARKK puts, and you can see that worked out very nicely, 105% roughly on that one. and some pretty good payout on that. So this was kind of the smaller hedge type account that I was trying to work with. And then let's take a look at this one. You can see this one, this was the nice one. So this is the one where I started getting a little bit heavy on those call credit spreads. Now, of course, maybe it's not as sexy or you want to do puts or whatever, but I really find credit spreads to be pretty nice. I know, 1-to-1 ratio, or maybe you can do a little better than that, but I like them for kind of their forgiveness, and they just kind of work for me. Anyway, the total that I'm up right now is 42% on these things out of 100, because remember, you can only go to 100% on these things. But today was a $27,000 day just on that position. Okay, so if that kind of tells you what we're looking at. Now, there were two here. I did one where I sold the 6400 call, I think it was this week, so that was kind of the more recent one, and you can see that's already up 77%. So you can see that was kind of a nearer term, all that kind of stuff. And then we have one that's a little bit deeper in the money, 6280. I've actually had this one on for a week and a half, if not 2 weeks at this point. And as I said, it was pretty forgiving. It was against me for a few days as the market kept going up, but I kept sitting on it. And then yesterday, which was Thursday, when we finally saw the market come down after the Meta and Microsoft earnings, I said, I sent out an alert to the Moxie trading room. I said, hey, if you want to add to your shorts, this would be about the right time. And I did. And so this is where you can see this one's up 50% already. So, on average, up 42%. I think that there's more to go with this. And so I'm going to be sit on these for a little bit longer and see what happens. And you can see here's the ARC put, up 108%, nice chunk of change right there. This one I was experimenting. I decided to buy the VIX, and as you can see here, up 89%, pretty decent on that one. And then we have an IWM put butterfly up, I'll call it 60%. I'm going to hang on to this one too for a while, because the longer I hang on to this, if it stays in that range, the more and more that we make as that center strike actually starts to dissolve. So that one's pretty nice. And then I decided to take a little bit of a wing on AMD and do some call credit spreads, and I'm up 30% on that one too. So you can see, a decent day out there. The AMD, I did mention it in the room. It's not an official alert. I wanted to try this one. I thought maybe it was a little bit risky because, good luck trying to short the semiconductors. Try to short the strongest name, right? That's always going to be the tough thing to do. So anyway, part of the thing, other than tariff news, because remember the tariffs were going to be enacted August 1st, which, okay, they did at midnight. There was also news that the revised NFP came out, so non-farm payroll. They really revised these things to the downside. Now, I think a lot of people out there are just like shaking their head and being like, this is ridiculous. What's the deal with this revision, especially such a big revision? Do we not have the technology that we can't figure this out by this point, or have a more up-to-date thing? Or like, how can you be that far off? So whatever, people say the numbers are cooked or whatever, just understand that that's just what's out there. Okay. But it was a big revision to the downside. Maybe it shows that the economy or jobs are not doing as well as we thought they were, but bad news is good news, because the worse that the economy is in this case, the more likely that we are going to get rate cuts, and of course the market wants rate cuts. So eventually I think this will end up being a good thing, because we'll get some rate cuts, and the market's going to love that. Meta and Microsoft with their giant moves, of course they outperformed certainly, but when you see a move like that, kind of at the tail end of what I thought to be the bull market, or this run on the bull market, it definitely felt like a blow off top, and that was certainly confirmed yesterday when the SPX just kept coming lower after having that huge gap up. So it really kind of confirmed. And then seasonality and a new month. So seasonally, July is pretty strong. But after you have a really strong month, people take profits, and we can't keep going up, and so we cycle back down, which is totally normal, very healthy. This is expected. And so we have seasonally weak, kind of August, September, maybe even into October. We'll kind of see how that goes. But also, it's a new month. I mean, I'm telling you, they wait to the exact day. For those of you who are trading with me, we were talking about this at the end of the quarter, which was at the end of June. And it was to the day. The big people out there, the big traders, the hedge funds, the firms, they want their books to look a certain way. And so they will hold the market a certain way until the books close on either the month or the quarter. And then, boom, then they can let it go, because then they can start the month all over again. And I think that we definitely saw a lot of that happening here. also. All right, so we'll go through a few of these things, really just kind of show you the indices because that's really what it's about right now since, most stocks are going down and they have been going down for 2 to 3 weeks. So as I said, we've been lightening up on this kind of stuff. I'll show you a couple notable stocks, but really it's about the indices. So let's dive into this. Again, we've been talking about this one for a while. Now, the biggest thing that I want to point out to you guys here is with the Moxie indicator. If you look at the Moxie indicator, we saw a signal back here where the indicator was below zero, but price was over the 50 SMA. That is not a good situation for the long side. It can persist for a while, but it's not great. It's what I call an inverse trampoline move. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below zero. Yes, we did eventually get a pullback in through here, which we put some trades on. And the market wasn't ready to go down yet, so it found some support. Actually, I think this is part of when the Iraq, Iran, and the Iran nuclear bombing situation happened, and so the market just shot up directly after that, and we totally jumped in on the long side right there, so that was fantastic. But the thing that was giving me the warning over the last few weeks is, again, look at the Moxie indicator below zero, but price was over the 50. So this was giving me the same warning signals that we were seeing back here, and I was even telling all the Moxie subscribers about this, like, hey, we need to be careful about this. And so that's why I stayed with the short positions that I had and just said, look, just keep hanging, just keep hanging. I don't want to be surprised. And, here you go. Here's your surprise 2% move, gap down day kind of thing. And we were totally 100% ready for it in every possible way. And I just showed you guys the results. So we totally capitalized on it. Great day for us. So anyway, yeah, I think at some point we're going to get a bounce. Of course, these things don't always just go straight down. I would like to see if we can go lower over the course of time. We'll have to see what that looks like. But now it's day trade mode. All right, so we're going to get a little oversold. We'll have to see what happens on Monday. But at some point we'll probably get a bounce. You can play the bounce, and then we'll see if we get another fade lower. And I want to see if we get back down to the daily 50, maybe lower. We'll have to see what this looks like. Of course, nobody ever knows what the market exactly is going to do as far as the way it looks, but I have some general targets of where I think we're going to go. But yeah, and if you guys are wondering about the Moxie indicator, you can pick this up over at simplertrading.com. I think we just wrapped up a special. Maybe if you can sweet talk the people at customer service, maybe they can help you out or something. But we did just wrap up a special with the Moxie indicator. So if you guys are like, wow, that's actually pretty cool, this thing totally would help me. Yes, it would. So come on over, pick it up. We have a lot of new people coming into the room. It's because of things like this where we can definitely see that the Moxie indicator is very helpful. All right, now let's compare this to the RSP. This is the same thing that I did last week, comparing the S&P to the RSP, because this is the equal weight of the S&P, and this was showing us that there was definitely a divergence between basically, the Magnificent 7 and the S&P 493. You could see that the RSP was at a double top. Okay. You could see that price was up. The Moxie indicator was down. You could see that negative divergence. You could see that price was starting to come down even though the SPX was up. You can even see here there's the Moxie price trigger. All these things that we were seeing was making a lot of sense, and then boom, there's price down to the daily 50. Now again, I expect this to probably go a little bit later. I'm sure we'll get a bounce at some point, but generally speaking, we'll see how much further this wants to come to the downside. There's no way that this is done going down because this is the first day of August. We're just going to have to give this thing some time in order to rest. And then if we look at the QQQ, and I'll show you guys the breadth because I think that's also going to be very telling as to how far this might go and what to look for. All right, then look at this. Here's another clue. I showed you guys on the S&P the Moxie indicator being below zero and price was moving up and finally got that pullback. Well, look at this. This was another very clear, persistent heads up that gave us a clue that the market was starting to really run out of energy and momentum on the upside, and you really needed to be careful up here because this is what happens. You keep trying to go up and up and up on negative momentum. Basically, momentum is below zero. It's negative, and it tried to go higher, and when you can't go higher on a situation like that, if you can't go up, then you go down, and that's what we're getting today. Finally cracked to the downside. We also know that this run was breaking records. I think we were well over 60 days of the S&P not touching the daily 20. Something like that. So super crazy as far as how strong this thing was, which is great. I mean, we had a good time. It's due for a pullback. This is totally normal, guys. But look what it did. It went from riding the 8 EMA to crashing well below and through the 21. If you're not prepared for this kind of stuff, it's going to be painful. So if you guys are feeling any pain or experience any pain out here, or just surprised and didn't see this coming, this is why you need to come into the Moxie room, because we were all over this thing for weeks. Okay, we were still trading things to the long side. We had A-Lab, we just cashed in 222% yesterday, on yesterday on A-Lab. So we still had some really good longs going during this market, but we were really prepared for the short side. So yeah, that's how we're going. We'll see what NASDAQ can do, maybe around its daily 50. We'll see how that goes. And then the IWM, this was another thing that we were seeing also very clearly was running out of energy. You could see here just price was starting to run into this previous price area. You could see again the Moxie indicator below zero, and then just look at the last week. I mean, look at this Moxie indicator, just brutally red, and actually accelerating. You could see this thing was accelerating to the downside, and so we had gotten short something back here, and we just kept hanging on to it, and now we're doing great. You know, we have that put butterfly. So I'm going to let the thing just kind of cook for a little bit longer and see how that goes. You look at the Dow, this thing was another case. You could see here, I talked about this for a few weeks, you know, right there. I mean, again, tops take time to form, okay? This was a topping process. As I said, it's a process. It takes time. That's why I made 3 videos every week talking about this, being like, be careful out there. And sure enough, we finally got it to crack. But look here, price over the 50, Moxie indicator below zero, and we finally got the thing to crack. And you could even see, look at this week, look at this thing following the 15-minute 50 and just continue to straight down. Okay, lots of warnings out there, and as I said, we were able to take advantage of that. Okay, SMH, this was the strongest, absolutely strongest sector out there. I did try to short it from some stock, probably something around there, you know, gave back a couple percent. But when this thing took a dip, first of all, that dip, I was like, yeah, I think that might be the shot across the bow. And yes, price ran up again, but this is how you know not to get suckered in. I mean, people always talk about, you know, oh, new highs and stuff like that. Well, I'm telling you, you know, it's not a new high unless you get a pullback, okay? Because it's kind of one of those mental games when you think about it. Every new high, in order to be a new high, has to have a pullback, because otherwise there's the next new high if it's higher. So, you know, new highs can always be a little bit treacherous. I mean, we saw this in the early 2025. I was at the Money Show and we were like, hey, new highs, and then the market rolled over, and that's what started the April declines. So yeah, new highs on this thing, but look, here's the clue. Here's the Moxie, here's price over the hourly 50. Here's the Moxie indicator below zero. Okay, it was persisting. And really, you needed to look at this and see just how far the Moxie indicator was going below zero. That was an absolute heads up. And I was guiding all the Moxie traders into this thing. I said, look, here's what we're looking for. When this thing breaks, that's going to be the trigger to the downside. I hope you guys took advantage of it. You can see I put some stuff on it. And clearly, we are now breaking back below the daily 21, and I think at least the daily 50 is in target. You know, probably not tomorrow or the next day, just give it some time, but I do think that price and the daily 50 will meet, and then we're just going to have to see if it's going to go any lower. Now here is FNGS. This is the ETF of the FANG stocks, and this too, I told you guys, this thing was showing us all the same clues. I mean, the last video I showed you was all about these inverse hourly trampoline moves where price was over the 50 and the Moxie indicator was below zero. I was like, guys, we got to be super careful around this. And you can see here I even have an X of where I think price is going to go. So price is at least going to come down to the daily 50, and if we go a little bit further, you know, maybe it comes down to there. You know, maybe this thing kind of comes back into this range. We'll just have to see. You know, give it some time. Now we're into day trade mode, and we'll see what's up. But yeah, no surprise. This thing was getting super duper tired on the upside. All right, that's kind of what we're looking at for there. And then if we look at breadth, let's see here. And once again, this is the thing, I've been talking about this thing for weeks. The market kept going straight up, but lower high, lower high, lower high. So fewer and fewer stocks were participating on the upside. And you can see here, it kind of topped out, and then we finally started to get a lower high even on the 50-day. And then you could just start to see this thing comes down. And so yes, now it is obviously and officially, you know, definitely breaking to the downside. We can definitely see that the market started to break down. So give it some time. We got some work to do on the downside. I won't be in any hurry to jump in on the long side. Of course, be doing some day trades. We'll be doing some calls with day trades, but you know, from a swing position, you got to give this thing some time. How about the VIX? This is another thing that I have been kind of talking about and warning about, and The clue was it's a short, it's, very fast. These things set up very quickly. For those of you who know my patterns and the Moxie Indicator and all this stuff, look at the hourly chart on the Moxie Indicator, or on the VIX. There's a 5250 right there. And you can see there's a Moxie price trigger. And you can see price basically started to engage with the 15-minute 50. Okay, so we got this. There was opportunity here. Now, if you even take a look at the UVIX, this is the This is the leverage ETF of the VIX. And I've been pointing out to the Moxie subscribers a couple things. Number one, now obviously, there's a ton of volume on this thing today. Okay, duh, but that's a little after the fact. Look at the last 3 days. Look at the volume on the last 3 days. Okay, something was clearly happening here. You can even see, something was back here, but that wasn't the real one. Something was really happening here. So these are some of the clues that you need to pay attention to in order to get long on stuff like this. Now, again, this is not totally set up to go to the moon, okay? I think this is just the first move. I think that there's going to be a second move that sets up sometime into the future. So these things are now in play. We're going to be now looking at these things and trading with them, and now you need to be experienced with these things, okay? These things are now game on. All right, let's take a look at ARKK. Now, ARKK, this one, let's see. This one actually went up yesterday as well because Roblox had again, blowout earnings. So Roblox, Meta, Microsoft, all that kind of stuff had really, really huge moves to the upside. And so that kept this thing kind of afloat. And I told everyone, I spelled it out in the Moxie room. So any of those subscribers, you guys saw this, I gave you exactly what to look for. It confirmed to the downside on Thursday. And I said, add more. If you want to be short this thing, add more. You can do that through SARK, or you can add more to the puts that we have, all that kind of stuff. And this morning, I had about 45 minutes before I got on my airplane this morning, and it was right there. You can see the line that I drew. That's when I put out the alert. I said, we're selling 3/4, or take more, like whatever. Take most of your profits off, because yes, this could bounce. It could go lower, but that's why I kept a little bit on. But we took profits here, at over 100% gain on that thing. You could just see this thing dropped. Now, of course, I think that there's going to be more downside, but it's probably not going to go in a straight line. Expect this thing to bounce at some point, and we can trade both sides now that this thing is in play. All right, here is ALAB. This thing had a huge flag. Doing great. We got in right there, and you can see the Moxie price trigger and everything like that. And then 3 days later, this thing shot up. We took some profits right there for, I think it was 120% right there. And then this thing also went up with the whole Meta and Microsoft news. And I thought, you know what? I don't think this thing's really going to sustain. It does have its own earnings. That's always a risk. And so I cashed in even more of this thing at a plus 225% gain on the calls that we had here. So, here was our entry. This was an exit, and this was a bigger exit up there. And as far as this thing goes, I'm just going to let this thing ride. We could look. I could totally give back everything that I have remaining on this, but it's a small size, and if earnings have it come down, fine. I'll give back the remaining position I have. But if this thing at least wants to try to hold or flag or do something, I have enough time on that option that I'm willing to let it go, and we'll see what this last little piece might be able to do for us. All right, and then if we look at Hood, now again, not everything goes up forever. Robinhood, very strong, great numbers, had a very solid earnings report, all of that kind of stuff, but they just can't go up forever. And once again, you can see here on the hourly chart, look at that. The Moxie indicator was absolutely screaming at you, okay? Absolutely screaming at you. Look how far below zero the Moxie indicator was compared to price being up here over the 50. That should absolutely not exist. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below zero. And this was another thing. This is why I got 100% out of this trade. Okay, I don't need to act like a big hedge fund or institutions to where I got to hang on to this thing. No, we got in down here, we took some profits, and then we got back, and then took some more profits, then we got back in, we took some profits, and then we got out completely. We were running this thing the entire way up. So now we just sit pretty. We just sit pretty. Hey, if you want to day trade this thing, go for it. If you want to trade it to the downside and you think that's going to work, go for it. But as far as my next swing long entry, I got to give this thing time. There's no way that I'm going to be trying to chase this thing long right now. Okay, so I love the name. Maybe they have some shady business practices back around the GameStop situation, but I want to make some money out there, and so I've jumped onto a stock like this that I thought was going to be doing pretty well. And right now, it's got to rest. Grab. And this one, yeah, okay, down on earnings. I told you guys I have a very long-term position on this. It's actually pretty much right back to our entries. We had an entry here, and an entry here, and we're right there. So, hey, no big deal. Again, I have like 500 something days on this thing. I think that this thing will look great sometime in the future, but go figure. The whole market's coming down. Is this thing really going to buck the trend too much? Yeah, probably not. So just kind of keep building a position in here. We'll see where it goes. And eventually, I think this thing will go higher, and that's why I'm not being too concerned about that one. But wanted to talk about it. All right, and then Ethereum. This is just another indication, another situation of where it was just evident that the market was pretty overbought. There's a lot of attention to Ethereum right now. Hey, look, great, I love it. We're in some names and trades that are related to Ethereum. I'd love to officially buy Ethereum on the next dip. But to think that Ethereum was going to keep going higher when you're right up here on this zone and it had gone vertical, no, of course not. Don't go chase it. Don't go chasing waterfalls up here. Okay, that's just not the place. And now you can see we have a Moxie price trigger to the downside. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I know it's going to pretty much come down or flag sideways or do something. Now's not the time to chase it to the long side. Give it some time, give it some room, and we'll see if we can find the next opportunity to get into something like this, wherever that looks like. Okay, so once again, I hope you guys are doing well. Remember, come over to simplertrading.com/Moxie. You can see that here. We're having a great time in the room. If for any reason this 2% down move in the market hurt you or surprised you or caused pain, you need to come over to the room because we're having a good time. I showed you guys the numbers and we're capitalizing on it. And we're just having a fun time. Showed you even the testimonials from people in the chat room today. I wasn't even there. I was traveling today, and people are happy. So I just want you to guys have a good time. Join the room, and we'll see you in there. All right, guys, take care.